Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome to the stage the president of the Reynolds Foundation, Dr. Álvaro Salas Castro.
Good evening. How are you guys? It's an honor to stand here tonight in the capital city of the world, New York City. And despite the local political results the past weekend, and even the global tariff war unfolding around us, this city still reminds us how bold we must be to win back the minds of the young, to help the next generations believe in freedom, in liberty, in independent actions and individuals, and spontaneous order. Freedom is not a trend. Freedom is not an algorithm. It is a moral choice that must be renewed every single day. And that is why we're here, because we're not just defending freedom, we're reimagining it for a generation that has forgotten how fragile it is. When I think of that mission, I think of Linda Whetstone, not as an icon or a name on a program, but as a friend. A woman who carried ideas the way others carry light, sometimes literally on CDs or USB drives filled with Austrian economics literature on her back. A mentor who shaped many minds into the classical liberalism, and who believed that freedom was not a concept, but a duty. We spoke for the last time only hours before she died. We were at the Miami Marlins Stadium of all places, surrounded by noise and light, and underneath it, you could hear the music of a Cuban activist singing what means not to be free. Through his art, he reminded us of a simple truth. Freedom is like oxygen. People rarely notice it until it's gone. Linda heard that music and said, you should find ways to bring the next generation of thinkers, of builders, and philanthropists who will take this movement forward. And maybe that's why I am relentless about bringing new blood like Max Reynolds into bold projects, because Linda planted that seed. She reminded me that optimism and courage to be bold is not naive, that pluralism is not weakness, it's civilization, and that freedom, if it is to survive, must be loved with bravery, with kindness, and with humility. 10 is my favorite number. 10 years ago, I stood on this same stage, as my friend Brad just said. 10 years ago, around 50% of the world lived under some sort of authoritarian regime, under some sort of autocracy. Today, it's more than 72%. So think about this. Close to 5.7 billion humans live without the rights most of the people in this room take for granted. They cannot own property, they cannot speak freely, they cannot move or vote freely, they cannot pray freely, they do not have the ultimate freedom, the freedom of choice. 10 years ago, trembling with a stopwatch, I delivered and won the John Blondell elevator pitch. I spoke of liberty as a force that could heal nations. I believe it then, and I believe it even more fiercely now. Back then, I told the story of a boy raised by a single mother and school bus driver, a boy whose best friend was murdered at age 14 by cartel members who stole his bicycle, a boy who learned too early that evil is efficient and good requires organization, a boy whose father was gay, and in the 1980s Latin America that meant exile from family, from church, from freedom itself. A boy raised by his grandmother while his mother worked 2 jobs to raise 4 kids. He learned to endure, adapt, work harder and smarter, and never let circumstance define his worth. He grew up in a house with broken chairs and books without covers, but full of love and music. He went to law school, business school, economic school, finance school, trying to decode a system not built for him. He founded a civic laboratory to fight for opportunity and rule of law and property rights, and the idea that freedom is not free, and that every human being deserves dignity. And that boy, my friends, was me. Linda took my hand and said, "You're now part of something bigger. Never let your past shape your sense of worth, and the time is now." I took her words to heart. I'm back home to Costa Rica, back home to Latin America. My team and I built communities where freedom could be taught through science, surf and sports, technology, art, music, even Bitcoin, the most revolutionary tool for decentralization and human rights and the fight for freedom, as my friend Alex Glassman taught me during these 10 years. From Demolab Foundation think tank to the Bliss Summit in Costa Rica, from the classrooms to Ithaca, in workshops in Buenos Aires, Bogota, Oslo, Kenya, Berlin, South Korea, and Thailand, I saw what Linda meant. Freedom is not an export. It is a seed that grows in local soil. And now, thanks to my partner, mentor, and brother, Tim Reynolds, and my colleague and closest friend, Caroline Reynolds, who trusted me to run their family office for the next decade, that seed has become a garden. Together, we're building a global ecosystem that invests in liberty the way others invest in finance. A freedom accelerator, a bold portfolio of projects, computer schools in Afghanistan for women fighting the Taliban, resistant networks in Venezuela, civic-led election moratorium in Bolivia, and civic opposition movements led by Janice Bacadaza, supporting the opposition in Russia. Yes, that deserves an applause. Supporting the opposition in Russia, a global summit for family offices to learn how to fund the freedom movement, a libertarian university in Argentina. Tim taught me through actions, not words, that we reverse the tide of tyranny one project at a time, one mind at a time. And Caroline taught me that freedom should be a big tent and that everyone is welcome. Freedom is not a museum artifact, it's a muscle. It lives in every act of conscience, every rebellion against fear. It lives in the students who refuse to cheat, in the journalists who refuse to lie, in the entrepreneur who refuses to quit despite endless bureaucracy. Our mission is to make freedom investable, measurable, irresistible. Only 2% of the global philanthropic pie funds the freedom and democracy movement, and less than 0.07% of that 2% goes to countries where tyrants are winning the fight. Because philanthropy is not charity, it is citizenship at scale, a moral imperative to fight tyranny. This battle of liberty versus tyranny, of open societies versus closed systems, and the future we build must be courageous, plural, or it will not be free at all. So tonight, on the same stage where a boy once begged the world to believe in him, a grown man stands here to say, thank you. Thank you to Linda, and thank you to the Reynolds family for believing in the underdogs, the punk rockers, the misfits, the fallen, and those fighting for dignity. Thank you to my wife, Noemi, the heartbeat of this movement. Thank you to the ecosystem for friends, allies, mentors, and purpose, for igniting in me a limitless passion for love, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Thank you to the Atlas Network, which turned ideas into institutions and institutions into global movements. And believe in us when I was starting this on a friend's couch as a broke PhD student. Thank you all who believe freedom is worth the fight. Because the world does not change when the state centralizes power. It changes when the free refuse to stay silent and refuse to stay indifferent. So please raise your glass with me. to Linda, who made liberty joyful, to every activist, scholar, entrepreneur, and freedom fighter who rejects cynicism, and to the future, that fragile and beautiful thing we build together, one act of courage at a time. To freedom. Viva la libertad, carajo.